Ahoy, and welcome back to Titanic Talkline. I'm Alexia, and I'm really excited this week to have on a good friend of mine and someone that's been not just like my stepway into the sort of quote unquote broader Titanic community, but having spoken to a lot of people has been their sort of bridgeway in. I have Bill Willard with me.
Hello there. Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to get a chance to talk to you.
I'm so excited. In the past, when we've tried to actually like work it out, I've always thought of it like way too close to TitanicCon when you don't have any time. Oh yeah, no, like planning an event that, oh man, good God. I've done that for work before where you have people that are helping you, and that's been a headache enough. Like just planning it because you want to. Oy.
We have a good time. We started it in 2016.
Hmm.
We thought there's right now two groups that they call theirs conventions. And if you're a member of that group, you would go to that convention. And I thought there's so many people that love Titanic that aren't a member of a group that
Hmm.
would love just to sit and meet and talk. I'd met Frank Goldsmith Jr., who was the son of young Frankie Goldsmith. And I said, Frank, if we get a group of people together, would you like to come up here and talk to us? And Frank said, I'll be there. I'd love to. And he has because of his age and his eyesight, he has somebody that travels with him to help with just walking through the airports and going to the right places and making sure we've got the right food on the menu. And Dave is his name. And Dave really wasn't feeling too comfortable about having to meet a lot of us. And by the second year, Dave was a member of our family. He comes in, we get hugs, everybody. It was that kind of an experience. The first 2 years was getting to know each other, realizing that all we're going to talk about here is interests in Titanic. We had good speakers, we had good exhibits, we had things to do. And that's what we want to promote is a feel-good weekend where people can sit with friends, have fun, no pressure, none of the outside. We've got so much mess going on outside of our little Titanic block. We want that to stay outside of our walls and just have some fun for a time. And that's what we've been able to do for 8 years, with the one exception being the COVID year. We did cancel during COVID when everybody else did. As a matter of fact, your viewers will appreciate this. The first time I got to meet you, I only knew you from here up because you were still masking at that time,
I
and
was,
you
and
had awesome
probably.
eyes, but I didn't know anything else about but your eyes.
Yeah, I was very hit. I will also say that, especially at the time, I hadn't, I have now sadly gotten COVID. I've gotten long COVID from it too. And all that it was just, this was closer to the thick of it when things were still really out of control and crazy. And I also think that that was the first time that I went there was this last weekend that we had the con the same time as Jeep weekend.
Oh,
I didn't realize I didn't like Jeeps. I didn't realize I hated them. I didn't like this was a newfound development that I acquired in Pigeon Forge. For listeners, I think I've talked briefly about this, but Pigeon Forge is a pretty small town. It's got sort of one major road. And we came in the same time that a massive Jeep convention was in town. I
for the
don't even
record, they chose our week for Jeep Week, so we were there first on that time slot.
I kind of wish I'd looked up the statistic of exact. No, I almost wish I'd looked up exactly how many Jeeps there were because they were everywhere, and they
30,000
yeah
approximately.
30,000 in a not huge town with one road, and they really liked doing these parades where they would just drive at 4 miles an hour in the one or two of the lanes, which if you need to take a right turn was great. It was a very stressful. It was one of those things where we started factoring in traffic when driving around the town of Pigeon Forge. Like, this is unusual. We shouldn't be doing this.
To get from our location, our venue, to the attraction was about a mile and a half. And literally in a vehicle, it took 2.5 hours. You
Yep.
were moving inches. There were times when you would sit at a red light and the red light would change 3 or 4 times
Hmm.
because the traffic in front hadn't moved. There's no place for them to go. You got 6 lanes or 5 lanes going east. And then at the end of the town, they cross over. And then you got 5 or 6 lanes going west. And then they'd cross over and they'd just drive in circles. People
Hmm.
would sit along the roads in lounge chairs and, clap as the Jeeps went by. And that's all they would do.
That's it. All day, every day. It was, and of course, being that it was a car convention, these weren't just people on foot. This was clogging, this was drive-throughs. There was no public parking. Every parking lot was absolutely jam-packed. It was a whole mess, and I wish that I had my electric scooter then. I don't mean like the kind that
Oh,
you
that would
sit
have been a
on.
gym. Just drive it down the sidewalk. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yup, especially considering that, as you said, nothing was more than a mile or two maximum, two maximum. And I was staying in a hotel that was quote unquote far away from you guys because I just booked that way. It was what, a couple miles, easy to manage, but in a car, not so much.
You could walk faster than you could ride,
You
really.
genuinely could. People did walk faster than you. You'd meet up with them at your destination, and they would be in their sneakers.
We changed that though. We moved away from Jeep Week and, thank you.
Yeah, geez. I know that you were talking a little bit, and I want to get back to the convention itself, but I want to know because obviously by the time 2016 rolled around, you were already very well entrenched in Titanic and the community. What is your Titanic story? That's normally the first question I ask everybody, but I wanted to talk about the convention first.
Um, I started reading about Titanic in 1974. This summer was 50 years for me. I've been studying Titanic. I'm a very visual reader. If I read a book in my mind, I see it and I'm in it. I'm almost in my own movie, so to speak. And Jack Thayer wrote a line that said that he jumped in the water and he swam away from the ship. And he was about 50 yards out and he turned to look back at Titanic and it was already submerged. Half of it was underwater, half of it was still up. And, it, and he said the imagery that really struck him was you would see above water the lights in the portholes, and then the lights continued underwater until the depth was so great that you couldn't see those lights. And he said, and then he saw people's heads as they went by those portholes, both above and below water. And that struck me so powerfully as a middle school student. And my mom yelled in one night. She called in. Let me say that. She said, "Bill, are you okay?" And I said, "I am." And she says, Are you sure?" And I said, "Yes, I'm reading. I'll turn the light out in a minute." She says, "Well, it's 2:30 in the morning. You got to go to school in a few hours." I couldn't put the book down. I read it 3 times in 2 weeks. And then once my mom found out I was passionate about something, that would be my birthday present or a Christmas present. And um, I ended up going out to the wreck site in 1996. I was an observer for that wreck site, for that expedition out there. And then in 1998, I built an ROV that went down to the bottom of the ocean floor. And so I was a part of the 98 expedition, and we raised a big piece. That was our claim to fame. Um, I got to meet all the major players involved in the current recovery, a lot of historians, a lot of important Titanic figures. And from that, it just continued. I got involved in the courtroom issues with Titanic because I was very good friends with George Tulloch, who was the leader of RMS Titanic up until an illegal hostile takeover in 99. I was sued twice for $1 million. I won those cases. And the people that sued me ended up paying $40,000 of my attorney's fees. Long story short, I was vested by that time. And I found out studying ancestry, there was a Constance Willard on board. And my Willard family knew, no, we don't know anything about that. That's just a common name. However, with ancestry, you're able to trace your ancestors. So I took my Willard line back into England, and they're from Horsmonden, Kent, England. And so I said, well, I'm going to start Constance Willard's tree. So I opened a tree for her and followed only her father's line. And he is from Horsmonden. his ancestors are from Horsemond and Kent, England. So I'm a distant cousin to Constance Willard. And that was pretty cool.
I think it's an interesting game's not the word that I want to play, but when you meet people within the Titanic community who are able to trace these relationships, because obviously we are now at a time where, first generation relatives, they're gone. We're into the second and third generations. We're getting further and further away. So even people who are able to claim very close relations to Titanic, survivors and victims, it's going to get further and further and further away. And I know that it seems a little silly to, not to quote The Emperor's New Groove, to be like, oh, they're my aunts, cousins, brothers, wife, step nieces, great aunt. But it is sort of important to do that little dance because otherwise you do lose those connections. Now, I mean, I guess in the future it might be a little quote unquote less impressive to be like 1100 generations back, we were related to someone from the Titanic. It's like, okay, Anley, sit down. But it keeps everything alive, and I think it keeps it in perspective too, because 1912 was over 100 years ago, but that's not that long ago, really.
Well, in 1620, the Mayflower landed, and there is
Mm-hmm.
still a group of people that are Mayflower descendants.
Mm-hmm.
Those people have, for lack of a better term, an inherent responsibility to continue the story and to pass those stories from generation to generation. And that's what those of us who study Titanic do. I've said many times that I know passengers on the Titanic better than I know some members of my own family, extended family, of course, but I know some of those stories so, from birth to death, what those people did, just because those were passions that I learned. And I felt a responsibility that Constance Willard, for example, died in California, and she was in a short mausoleum until her brother brought her remains back to the family cemetery in Minnesota. And she is lying in a grave right now that's unmarked. I contacted the cemetery and I said, she deserves a headstone. She deserves a marker that has her name, where her remains are. And I would love to put a headstone with her name, her dates, and that she was a Titanic survivor. He goes, we have a Titanic survivor in our cemetery? And I said, yes. And I told right where she was. And he says, yeah, we got it marked here, but we didn't know that's who she was. And I said, if you'll go over a couple of um, little islands, they have, the roads around them. A couple of lots over, you have the Pillsbury family, and you have two more survivors in that part of your cemetery. And he's going, I didn't know this. So we are going to prepare a headstone for Constance's plot. And legally, I don't own the grave and the family plot, so I don't have the right to do it autonomously. However, the last person that contacted them about that plot did so in the late 60s. So it's somebody's great grandchild by now that owns the rights to it. And the curator of the cemetery said, what you're doing is honorable and respectful. It's not gaudy. It's not tacky in any means. I don't think anybody would object to this, but understand if somebody comes up and says, no, we don't want that there, we'll have to remove it. And I said, we'll do it with that understanding. He said, but they're not going to do that. This is something nice and respectful, small in the ground. That's all it is. So um, we still can do something like that for some of those Titanic people. And you're right. The first generation's all gone. The second generation, there's a handful left who are sons or daughters. And we've had two of those at our conference. We will this year have Frank Goldsmith at our conference. Frank Goldsmith's father was Frankie Goldsmith, who was 9 when Titanic sank. We've had Joan Randall before. We've had their children, the grandchildren of people that were on the ship, and great grandchildren before. We've had Helen Benzinger, who is a wonderful lady to talk to, and her great grandmother was Margaret Tobin Brown, Molly Brown, is what most people will remember her as. So we get a lot of people. We pay tribute to those who are still here, and they share their family stories. And the crowd gets emotional. We had Betty Myers, and I don't think you were at that conference. I think that was the one before you came. Betty was 96 years old, and her grandfather was the Reverend Bateman, John Bateman, Robert Bateman, excuse me, Robert Bateman. And as Reverend Bateman, the ship was sinking, he hands his Bible to his sister-in-law, and he says, maybe you can use this. Maybe it'll still have some good in it for someone else to use it. Well, that was not an artifact that was recovered. That ended up being sold by some family member. The Titanic attraction, Pigeon Forge, acquired it. So they have that in their collection. So Paul Burns, who is going to be speaking with us this year in August, Paul always brings over 2 or 3 wonderful little treats. And he said, I've got a real surprise for you today. And he holds up, I have the Bateman Bible. And my wife was going, Betty's outside. Betty's outside. So I said, Paul, hold up just a minute. We didn't know that you were bringing the Bateman Bible, but we'd like to introduce somebody, if we could, Miss Betty Myers, who is the granddaughter of Reverend John Bateman. And everybody in that room is going, that lump started. And then she walked up and she got to touch her grandfather's Bible for the very first time. She even recognized his handwriting in, some of the areas. And people are booing, the videotapes are just, some of them are just really, and I'm back there covering my mouth because I'm having tears that we got to share such an incredible moment. That's our job now, is to keep these moments alive, to continue sharing these stories. That's what we try to do.
I've brought up the movie Coco probably one too many times on this show, but it's because it introduces and really simplifies sort of that concept in a really elegant way, where there's a period of time where the two main characters, there's Miguel, the little boy, and he's talking to Hector, who's, older. I'm assuming he's probably in his late 20s, early 30s, and he wants to know why another skeleton in the land of the dead just suddenly disappears. And Hector explains to him that in addition to, traditional death, when you leave the earth, they have a concept called the second death, which is where there's nobody left living to remember you. And he says that's when you're really gone, when there's no one left to keep your memory alive.
We hope that never happens for our ship, for the many passengers on it. There's already a lot of passengers that we know limited information about. And a lot of people are working hard to find out, so that, as you just said, that there will be someone to remember.
There's something also that, like, in a digital age, it's hard to remember that records just were not kept in the same way. Everything had to be done by hand. And if, for example, if I was holding the file containing all of the adult women second class passengers and I dropped it into the ocean, there's a very distinct possibility that there is not a backup of that exact
Absolutely.
file.
Absolutely.
So we can do our best and go around asking, Miss, what's your name? Miss, what's your name? Miss, what's your name? But that may not be exactly correct. And maybe some of those tickets got sold outside of our knowledge and the names may have changed a little bit. Or maybe I wrote it down wrong and that's not actually how you spell that name. There were so many variations, and that doesn't even get into the more complex matter of how people of color and foreigners and poorer people, you didn't care so much about carrying their records. Not, it just, who cares how many of them there are? Get them on board, doesn't matter. So it's really hard to sort through and find out who some of these people are, when honestly, even at the time of boarding, you may not have even known who they were at all as they walked by you.
What you've said is very true. We had the rostrum list of survivors, which Captain Rostron and his officers took aboard the Carpathia. but there were names that were known to be Titanic survivors that were not on those lists. So around 2000, three or four different historians took it upon themselves to create the master list. And all three concluded the same numbers about the same time. And that's where we come up with the 712, 1496 numbers. The roster numbers were 705 and 1503. But there are passengers who were not Anglo in English, they didn't speak English. And when they would go to write their names down phonetically, they would end up in 2 or 3 different spellings. One of my favorite ones is the Nakid family. Nakid is how it's pronounced, but an English person speaking American would pronounce it naked, is what it looks like. And I had somebody come up to me and says, do you know the story about the naked people on Titanic? And I'm going, I hope you mean Nakids. And it was a joke for several years about the Nakids. But a lot of the Middle Easterners, for example, they were very difficult because of the phonetic spellings. They just didn't use the English alphabet. So that caused a lot of consternation and a lot of study. It really did. Good point.
That comes up if people are familiar with it at all. That comes up in Stephen Schwenkert's The Sixth, where he talks about the Chinese passengers, and it's not a very significant part of the documentary, but it is mentioned that, as you were saying, trying to write with English characters the correct pronunciation of a Chinese first and last name that is accurate to how you're supposed to say it, but also I don't really speak English, so I don't know what this letter actually means. I'm guessing, you're guessing, and we're all guessing.
Absolutely. Steve did a great, great volume of research making that documentary. That is one of the top in the 20th century, amounts of research that had been done. Just, it was fabulous. He did that in the 21st century, my bad. He's done it since 2000. But that's been one of the greatest pieces of how do you research this story? And he even found the son of one of the victims, or one of the passengers, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And we have invited him to come be with us this year, but I don't think he's going to make it. But we did invite Tom Fong to do that. And hopefully he can come and join us in the future. We'd love to have him as being a direct descendant, first of all.
Mm-hmm. That would be incredible to, again, the further and further away we get from the event, the further and further away we're going to get from the people that were directly involved in it. But one part that I really liked about Steven's documentary is they did a part where they made a replica of a lifeboat to illustrate basically that it is impossible to have hidden in a lifeboat. And I was born basically in the 90s. I love the Cameron movie. It's one of my favorites. But I will say, I know that it's obviously angles and there's a whole lot going on, but I didn't get an idea of exactly how big the lifeboats were until I saw the documentary, because those were built to scale. That was basically built off of the plans. They didn't need to adjust for any. That's not going to fit on our set. They could build the lifeboat exactly as it was supposed to. And I thought that was really, really interesting because, again, I never got the scale from a movie. It's hard.
It is. Jack and Rose on the Love Boat is what I call Cameron's movie. It's I do that more just for the fun of it. But he did such an incredible job of trying to put things in the 1912 perspective.
Mm-hmm.
He went to the carpet makers who made carpet for the real Titanic to get the same pattern for his movie. Same thing for the plates and the cups and the silverware and the lamps and much more. He went to extreme detail to get those parts of the ship looking as they really did. And many of us in Titanic world could not thank him enough for doing that. He even had his ship built to what Titanic looked like, rather than going aboard a ship as all the other movies have. They go on board another ship and there are differences. You can tell that, oh, they're on the Queen Mary, they're not on Titanic, you know. But I really appreciated seeing Titanic at sea with the smoke coming out of the first three funnels. Um, that with the soundtrack, who could not have enjoyed that feeling from the Titanic enthusiasts?
It is an enjoyable movie, and there are, excuse me, a lot of subtle little details in there that do show that a lot of research went into it. And, one of the primary consultants on the film was the dearly beloved, not because he's passed away, but because he is just dearly beloved, Don Lynch. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to hear him speak. He's a very nice, very down to earth guy. And it's nice to see someone else's passion, or like the passion of an entire community, reflected and respected by someone in that way. Because very often, as you're saying, there's so many details that are just left out of something because you can tell that the person might be a fan, but not that big of a fan of
And
whatever
I
it is.
appreciated how James Cameron listened to Don
Yeah.
and Ken Marshall and several others
Yep.
because he wanted the accuracy. You're correct about Don. Don's knowledge of Titanic is in the top 1%. Absolutely. He, you call out a name and he can talk about a name for an hour. And this is just what he's done in his lifetime and what he's accomplished. A lot of respect for Don and what Don has done. I really have. Um, and he came to our conference in August of last year for a few days.
He
And
did.
I did have a chance to sit and talk with him. And, we're going to look maybe at next August, bringing him in as one of the major speakers.
That would be incredible. And anyone listening, that's an opportunity you should not miss. Don gives a wonderful lecture. Not everyone is both blessed in knowledge and public speaking. He is. I wish more people who did public speaking were blessed in it.
There's truth to that.
I
Not
might be
all
one of them.
researchers are good speakers.
No. Some of them are, obviously, but some of them are not. And it's no fault of their own. But going back to the convention, because that's what I was kind of really excited to talk about, just because I want to know, especially last year was in Vegas. So there was a different location. It also attracted a different kind of group of people, I think.
Different
What
tenor
is
to it, completely. Absolutely.
mhm. What is it like seeing the convention of, what year is it? 2023 compared to 2016 or 2017 for you personally? Just knowing what it's been like to put it together and seeing where it is now.
The early couple of years we were in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and it was growing. We started off with a dozen people. It was a small group. We didn't have to rent a hotel. We had looked at it if we had a lot of numbers, but a lot of people were going, I don't know about this. And then the 12 people had so much fun that the next year we were in the 50s, and we've grown ever since. The first thing we do is secure a venue that can hold approximately um, anywhere from 75 to 95 people. We usually have around 80, 85. Um, Last year was different. It was the 20th anniversary of the raising of the big piece, which, if you're a Titanic fan, in 1998, the big piece is the large section of the hull that they brought up. They tried to bring it up in 96, and our team in 98 did bring it up, and it's on display there. So I thought August 10th, Titanic Conference 20th anniversary, and we were able to get in touch with a lot of people from our expedition who flew to Vegas, who came to Vegas to be a part and to tell their stories. And it was just a wonderful weekend as far as hearing what happened on that ship, from the hurricane, from the power problems, from the successes, from the different. We had the ship's doctor come, Dr. Budman came and talked to us. We had Susan Wells, who is an author in San Diego, who gave daily updates, and she gave a brilliant narrative of what we did in 98. Had a lot of photographs that were Gunter Bobler's photographs. Gunter could not join us himself, but he gave us permission to show his photographs. And of course, it paralleled the book that was written to go along with the 20th anniversary of that piece. Normally, what we do is we're at a hotel venue. We have a large meeting room. We have some tables where people set up exhibits, or I'm going to sell my book at one of my tables, and also a puzzle that I made, and whatever other little thingies that I want to throw out there. And Frank Goldsmith will sit and he'll sign autographs. He will sell his DVD, things of that nature. So we have time where you just pull up a chair and you just talk to people. And in that free time, I call it roundtable time, is priceless, because if you don't want to talk to Frank Goldsmith, there's 12 other people to go sit and talk with. Or you can go jump in the pool and come back an hour or two later. You can do whatever you'd like to, but you have opportunities to go one-on-one with individuals. We've grown. A lot of the descendants and ancestors, family members come. This year we're having Angelica Harris, who wrote a story about her husband's ancestors. It's her husband's, grandfather's two brothers, the Paracchios. And Angelica is going to look forward to telling that story. And it'll be the first time she's been to one of our conferences.
She's amazing. I'm so excited for her to talk. She's been on my show before, and she's fun, she's charismatic, she's great. I'm really excited. And also, I love her story. She's got a great story. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm really
No,
excited that Angelica's going to be there.
I'm looking forward to hearing her. We've got Kelly Bortner coming, whose great grandmother was Jessie Trout. So she's bringing several of her family members who are direct descendants. Trout down to her, and she's bringing her parents, and she's bringing, I think, a sister is coming also, but those are direct descendants. So those will be first timers at our conference. So we've got a lot of people that come to see what it's like, and they have so much fun, they come back. We get about a third to a half of people that keep coming back because they have so much fun. It's we've the larger conference groups charge about $500 for the conference. For us, it's $175. I'm not in it to make money. I'm not in it to try to fund research or anything like that. I'm in it just to break even. And most years I'm close. If I'm down a couple of years, I'm a little up a couple of years. So we end up being in the middle. We try to find a place that's inexpensive. We try to find, I help the presenters a little bit. I don't fly them all in. I can't afford to do that because then it would get extremely expensive. Mary Kellogg Jocelyn, who is the owner of the Titanic attraction, we formed a good bond with Mary. She's treated us wonderfully, partnered with us on many things. She allows Paul to come over and bring those pieces. We have a gala dinner in her establishment. It's in the middle hidden floor. It's like a conference room. And the dinner that we had there 2 years ago was incredible. And the dinner is my menu, and it's based off Titanic dinner menus. The soup is cocky leaky, which is chicken with leek soup. And I could make a meal out of that. I love that soup. It was to die for. And I think this year we're having roast beef with jacket potatoes. And for dessert, last time we had an eclair that would just float off your plate. It was so light. We had to put a fork on it to keep it from going up. But this year she's got a new something on site where they do it's like a gelato type, and they're gonna do up a nice little dessert for each of us, and Mary's offered that to us. So that's one of the things. We're doing something else. We've watched a movie a time or two. We went to a theater early in the morning one Saturday, early meaning, not 8:30, 9 o'clock, whatever, and watched A Night to Remember on the big screen. And I asked the question, I said, how many of you have ever seen A Night to Remember on the big screen? And one hand was raised. And I said, would you like to tell us about that? And it was Frank Goldsmith Jr. And he said, I saw this movie on the big screen one time. I was sitting with my father in 1953 at the premiere, and we watched it that night. And everybody's going, so he had not seen it in 60 some, almost 70 years. But he was sitting with his dad when he saw it last. So that brought up good memories for him. We saw SOS Titanic in 2022. I'm sorry. We were going to watch the six, but they didn't send us a DVD. They sent us an electronic link, and we couldn't get it up at the theater. And I was pulling my hair out. So we ended up seeing that at the conference venue that we had. And this year we're going to see the movie Unsinkable, which is a brand new Titanic movie, telling the William Alden Smith story from the side of the American inquiry. And I liked it. There's a lot of people that said, well, there's some mistakes in it. No, well, James Cameron had some things in his that were not 100% accurate, but you've got to go in and look at the good things that it talks about. And it gives the Titanic inquiry a different perspective, how to think about it from a different angle. And I enjoyed that thought.
I'm going to be the first one to say that law and politics are not my area of entertainment. And I'm not even saying that as a joke. It's not even like, oh my gosh, math is so not my thing. That's not what I'm attempting to say. But because of that, the inquiries are things that I've read excerpts and books about. I've read about the inquiries, but I've never been one of the people that actually sat down and read the transcripts. I looked up particular bits for research. And I haven't gotten a chance to see the movie yet. So, and I'm waiting till the convention. So I'm actually really excited to see it because I haven't seen it. And as you said, this is something I don't have a lot of perspective on. And it's a part of the Titanic story that is not often revisited because, of course, the fun part to revisit when you're writing anything Titanic related is the voyage, the crash, and the sinking. That's very fun and interesting, and it's exciting. It's exciting. You can pitch a movie based off of that. It's hard to say, all right, gonna need about 30 million and it's going to be about a court case. It's a lot easier to go in and be like, I need 30 million and it's going to be this beautiful ship that explodes. It's easier to see where you might get a good ROI on that second one. So I can see where it's a more difficult story to tell, but I'm very excited to hear it.
One of the things that we've done when we've tried to work with some documentarians to make a documentary or two is they are of the belief that there has to be a conspiracy theory for people to be interested in it, or a new theory of why Titanic sank. And I tell them, I tell you a secret, Titanic people are sick to death of hearing what angle was the ship when it finally started to go under. Which passageway did water enter first? They don't care about those things. When you deal with your brain, you deal with facts, you deal with data. It sticks on a piece of tape and it stays up there until the tape fades and falls away. But when you deal with your heart, when you see a mother holding on to a child as they are trying to put her safely in a lifeboat and she's terrified and people are grabbing on to try to save her, that affects you in the brain and in the heart. And you have a different emotional response to it that you'll remember a lot more. And I tell the documentarians, when you start dealing with the heart, that's when you're going to get your ROI. Nobody cares about another conspiracy theory. And Unsinkable will deal with the transcripts. And if you start getting where you can't fall asleep at night, insomnia, start reading your transcripts because it's like a lawyer asking 500 questions and 200 of them are the same thing, just asked a different way. One of my favorite ones that he asked Officer Lowe is, what do you suppose an iceberg is made of? And Lowe says, ice, I suppose, sir. That's the kind of questions they were trying to get to and that's a true part of the transcript.
It
And
absolutely is. If anyone,
is.
That's the most interesting part of the transcript is Lowe getting extremely visibly frustrated through black and white.
Absolutely. But what both the inquiries are trying to do, you'll see in Unsinkable what they're trying to do. They're trying to say, whose fault was this? We want to blame and put the blame on somebody. Who is it? And the British inquiry was more of, if anyone was at fault, who was it? So one's head hunting, where one is there a head to hunt? That is a novice opinion, so to speak. But those are the questions that they're asking. And did they find out anything really significant? Um, it's tough to read between the lines when there's so many lines. It's like, there's 1,000 things. I don't see anything that could slip through. The one thing that the American inquiry did, William Alden Smith was the senator from Michigan, is shortly after this American inquiry, they passed a few laws that any ship that landed at an American port must have enough lifeboats for everyone on board, including crew and passengers and other people. There must be procedures for an emergency. You go on a cruise today, the first thing you do before your ship pulls out of the harbor is you go to your muster station, or you participate in a drill where you will report in the event of an emergency. They have lifeboat space for everyone times 2 or 3 now. They have automatic boats that can launch at pressure, and they pop up in their large rafts. And those are just in case. And they'll have dozens of those in the water in case there's some emergency, where people that didn't make it into another lifeboat still have something they can swim to. They formed the ice patrol. They also said one of the errors that went on in the Titanic case was that at 11-ish, 11 early, 11:30-ish, everybody's turning off their wireless and they're going to bed. This was common practice. 11:37 is when Titanic struck the iceberg. So it was only by a fluke that Carpathia heard Titanic's SOS. So someone will man the wireless 24 hours for emergencies. We've had a recent disaster in June of last year with the Titan. P.H. Nargeolet was a personal friend. I'd worked with P.H. in 98, met him in 96. I've been to his home in France. I've been to see him in Connecticut many times when I would go to see George Tulloch. And it was very painful to lose such a wonderful person like that. But whether we grow or not as a humanity is going to be what laws will be put in place or what safeguards will be put in place so that that never happens again, so that we don't have to deal with that situation again. And that's what I'm anxious to see, is what recommendations the inquiry and the forensic people will look at. A lot of us have some ideas, but I keep mine close to the vest because it's all going to come out. It's all going to come out of who was at fault, what was at fault, what was caused, what could be done better, what should be done better, so that it is prevented in the future. And that's how we grow from one disaster to another. It's a shame it cost human lives to teach us those things. But we're not that smart yet. We're not that smart.
I think there's a saying, every regulation is written in somebody's blood. And it's very sad that, so many things that we think of, as you were discussing cruise ships and how many, as you said, basically the second you step foot on board, you're immediately whisked to your muster station. That's so common now. You get on an airplane and the first thing they do before you even really take off is, okay, we're going to review the safety protocols now. Yep. Bill's doing a very good impression of putting the vest on and blowing into the tube. But these are so common to us that, you don't even, half the time you don't pay attention, because like I've memorized most of the airline safety protocols because they're habit to me now. But it's so interesting to think that there was a time when that wasn't a concern. No, who cares about a drill? Or do we have enough lifeboats for everyone? Maybe. Bring me a sandwich. It's so interesting how things that are normal now sadly just were not at the time. And you would never think about turning off your communication system now just because you're tired. Well, that's just too bad. It needs to be manned at all times, but back then it was closing time.
That's it. Time to go to sleep.
Yeah, good night. Bye.
It Yeah, you said it exactly. So many things have changed since Titanic, and so many things will change every time there's um I like that phrase. I'm going to use that every regulation is written in someone's blood.
That's
There's
not even mine, sadly, but
a
it's
lot of truth to that.
yeah. And I remember a while ago I saw something and at first it made me laugh and then someone explained the regulation thing to me. It was a baby stroller that said the foldable baby stroller and has the instructions on the side and it says step one, remove baby. And that's funny to me at first, as I was like, well, why is that not? I was probably 15 at the time. I don't have kids. I didn't have kids then at all. But even I'm looking at that thinking that seems wise. But I brought it up to somebody, probably my mother, and she was like, yeah, they probably had to do that because someone didn't do that. It's like,
It's scary. It is
yes.
really scary.
Yeah,
They even now write on pizza boxes, please open carton before eating pizza, you know. I'm going, you got
that's
to be kidding me.
fascinating.
You take the pizza out of the pizza box. Who doesn't know to do that?
I mean, yeah, and just obviously we think, going back to like lifeboats and stuff, it's like, yeah, that's so obvious to us. Who doesn't know to do that? I guess you don't know to do something until you find out you should be doing something.
Imagine that you go on a cruise that leaves on a Portuguese ship, a Brazilian ship, which
Hmm.
is written in Portuguese. And you walk on that ship, and every sign is in Portuguese, which you do not speak.
Hmm.
I don't know where the kitchen is. I don't know where the ballroom is. I don't know where the bathrooms are. I don't know where the swimming pool is. I, they show a scene in Cameron's movie where a man's flipping through a dictionary to see what a sign says.
Hmm.
But that is really a tragedy if you can't speak that language. That
Hmm.
we don't have a common language in the world. We have to be able to communicate with others somehow, some way. And so,
It's helpful now when you go on cruises that they do have people from almost everywhere. I was on a Carnival cruise last year, and on their staff badges, they have their name and their country of origin. And I've personally just thought it was neat to see where everybody was from.
absolutely.
But, oh, because I think it's a fun time. But if I only spoke Tamil, I would start looking for people whose name badges said they were from India and trying my luck because I need some help. And, it's great now that we're able to employ people from everywhere. But, there used to be, again, in early 1900s, there were rules about what certain classes and ethnicities of people could and could not do. And,
Glad we've
it,
transcended some of those barriers. We still have
yeah,
more to go, but
we do.
we're making progress as a human race.
We are. At least we don't have first, second, and third class spaces
And for
anymore.
the
I mean,
record, at the conference, we may not speak Tamil, but we will try to get someone who can help you if you wish
mhm.
to come to our conference.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, and that's the other thing. I think that one thing I do like about smaller events is that if you do, it is a little easier to try and find personal accommodation because, the organizers might have a little bit more time to just help you out with something where you might be like, hey, I don't know Tennessee very well and I'm a little anxious. Is there another solo traveler that might want like a roommate or just someone who wants to stay at the same hotel so that we're not both totally alone? It's nice to be able to have that
Saves your
as a resource.
costs as well to have
Yeah.
someone, you got your two beds, each of you do your own thing, but you at least can journey and make a new friend. Absolutely.
And even if you don't end up wanting to stay together, just having someone that's slightly accountable for you, it makes you feel a little bit more comfortable. Just knowing that there's someone who's kind of looking for you. Little safety tips, but for this year's convention, we've talked a little bit about it, but What are you personally most excited for this year?
August 12th, where I
Is
can go. Another
go to
good
sleep.
year.
Honestly, that's a fair answer. I remember I did a fundraiser a couple years in a row, and I was the only one running it. And at the end, people would always ask like, "Oh, are you really excited?" I was like, "Yeah, for it to be over. It's giving me anxiety."
Seriously, what I'm looking forward to, I always have, my wife is a great help. Um, Joanna Strasberg offers to help in every way that she can. She's wonderful, and so many people step up. I know that we've already got two people who have volunteered to make shuttle runs to the airport. From our venue to the airport, it's about 30 to 40 minute with red
Mhm.
lights. And they're going to go pick up people and bring them to the hotel, then taking them back Sunday, um, and possibly Monday, when we're done. So those people step up and really help. I'm looking forward to having Billy Lang speak to us. If you don't know Bill Lang, Bill was with Dr. Ballard's team in when Titanic was discovered. Bill is the one who yells, "Look, a boiler!" when they recreated that discovery. But he was there, he was present. He is also extremely gifted when it comes to imaging systems. He'll be able to, he may be bringing some items to share with us, images, pictures, videos, things like that, of the wreck site, and all the things that he's been doing since then. So I'm very interested in looking and hearing what Bill has to say. I've talked with him numerous times. A lot of respect for everything he's accomplished. I'm interested in hearing Angelica Harris and Kelly Bortner, as we've mentioned before, and their new stories that are fresh to our conference. I love Frank Goldsmith to death. Um, I can't wait to see Frank and talk with him. And every time they have a hurricane down in near where he lives in Florida, I always get worried, and I call to check on him to make sure he's okay. And so I'm looking forward to seeing Frank again. And there's just so many people that I don't get a chance to see in our regular lives that, I'm going to get a hug when they come in the door because they're special people to us. They really are. Paul Burns is a great, great friend, and he has done so much to help us. Um, Same with Mary. We're going to have something new this year. Um, the Knoxville Irish Step Dancing Group are step dancers. And we are going to have a session before the gala dinner where, if you would like to learn a little bit about the basics of step dancing, you can stand up and they will teach you the basics.
Yeah, I'll
No
go to that.
charge. Are you going to do that?
Oh, as I love Irish dance. Irish dance is so cool.
And they're going to be doing it to Mackenzie's fiddle.
Oh, I love
You met
that.
Mackenzie. And
I
so
have,
at the
yes.
gala dinner later that night, they are going to perform for us. And then we're going to have, okay, the conference step dancers, please join them. And you can get up there and all of you step dance together to a Mackenzie tune. And we're
That's
going to,
that's debatable. My participation in that is debatable. I did offer, and it is still on the table. We can discuss it. I did offer to do karaoke for you. That's the one thing I might actually be able to be persuaded to do for y'all. If anyone wants to hear the first time I've ever sang "My Heart Will Go On" since I was 9 years old, uh, you can come out and see and hear that.
the first conference that we did, not in this string from 2016. I
Mhm.
did one in 1999 after our expedition. It was down in Greenville, South Carolina. We did it at the Hilton there. And we had another actor from the movie. It was Bernard Fox. Bernard
Oh,
Fox was Dr. Bombay in Bewitched. He was in The Mummy as Winston the pilot. He had finished just filming that movie. And so, but he also was in A Night to Remember as Frederick Fleet. So we got to hear him telling of two Titanic movies he was in. He would tell stories that the public did not know. And
hmm.
he was supposed to talk for about 45 minutes, and an hour and a half later, we had to, we got to leave tonight type thing. And
People have
everybody,
flights.
they were just falling all over. But that was our very first conference. And even back in those days, it was such an experience. And I'm trying to think what else we had. We had members of the expedition team come out there as well, and had 125 people show up for a nice dinner. And it was a 1 day event, so it was super. But have Bernard Fox. This year we're going to have 3 actors right now, 3 of the cast members from Titanic. Judy Preston Enzi and Ellen Mower are going to be with us. David Knopf has let me know that he would like to be there. David was in 2 different scenes. Ellen Mower is in the famous scene when Lo goes back into the field of bodies,
Mhm.
and there's one holding an infant. That's Ellen Mower. So
Ooh.
she has probably one of the most powerful scenes. Everybody sees that and just gasps. Ellen was going to be with us in Las Vegas, but was not able to be there
Mhm.
with us due to something that came up. But she's coming this time, and we're going to look forward to having her. So we've got cast members, we've got Bill Lang, we've got history stories, we've got artifacts from Paul Burns. Brian Hawley is going to give us an amazing overview of something. We've got breakout sessions where you can hear different people on different topics, pick the ones that you'd like best. We've got the Irish step dancers, which is new. Goodness, who am I? I know I'm missing somebody important, and I apologize. But it's if people are going to fly from Washington State to
Mhm.
Tennessee, we want to give them something that's worth their flight time.
I used to
And
live in Maryland and it was an 8-hour drive, but I'm going to be doing the 15-hour drive from Austin this year to
oh,
make
bless your
it.
heart.
Yeah, I mean, there's people that are coming from distances, there's as you were saying, there's a reason to come back year after year. And I was actually going to bring up, not just for narcissistic reasons, but I was going to bring up the breakout sessions because for the first time since I've been attending, you've had so many people interested in speaking that it necessitated that. That's incredible.
A lot of people and a lot, and for the viewers, Alexia is going to have a session, and she's going to
I
talk about
am.
social implications. She'll tell you the whole title in a minute, I hope, but it's about how just something like her little talk time that she has affected and what it's done and impacts like that. And
Yeah,
there's a lot of people that are looking forward to hearing about that.
I
And
hope
we're
so.
excited to have you.
And I was also really excited because about the breakout sessions because you're not talking every day. So the day that you're off, you get to attend the other sessions. And there's a few that I'm excited about. But yeah, really quickly, mine is called Titanic Talk Line Lessons from the Digital Domain. And it's going to be about things I've learned from the show. And not to spoil it for anyone, it's mostly about human connection. It's going to be a lot about the sociology involved with it, trying to talk about something a little new from the show because I don't think anybody wants to hear the same old story from a person who started a podcast. I'm like, let's be a little smarter about this. And I'm going to embarrass myself to start with by telling a online psychics story. So that's, yeah, we're going to start off just letting everyone know what kind of a smart person I am. So look forward to that.
We're looking forward to having you, and I'm looking forward to hearing you.
I'm so excited to come back. It's always fun. And as you were just saying, there's so much cool every year. There's more cool new stuff. I'm really excited for the step dancers. I didn't know they were gonna come at all. This was news and I'm excited about it.
We
Something
try to do
energetic.
the $175. The other conferences are around 500, like I said earlier,
Mm.
and we try to make it worth your while. It includes the tour of the attraction, which we'll do. It'll include the gala dinner, which is that meal's an $80 to $100 dinner. It is that nice of
And
an
it's a good
event.
time too. Everyone dresses up, and if not period appropriate, they just dress up.
We ask for no t-shirts and blue jeans and flip-flops.
Mm.
Polo shirts fine. Um, one fellow one time says, I didn't bring anything but t-shirts. So we still
Oh,
allowed him to come in. But he said, next year I'm definitely bringing a collared shirt.
but that's just a mistake.
That was that it wasn't like, he's got some little beach t-shirt on or anything like that. It was still a nice shirt. But it's a formal, it's not really formal, it's just a very nice environment. But you're
Yeah,
right, we have a handful that'll dress up in period attire, and they
I
walk
love
around
that.
and pose with people. We have about an hour until food's served, and it gives people a chance to just to mingle and photograph. And we do something pretty cool. The tables are all set, and when they take you up by elevator to this secret room. And when you come out, in front of you will be a small table with all the names, table cards. So you will pick your table card and you will find out, I want to sit right over there. So you'll put your place card there. And that means you don't have to sit there and go, this is my seat, stay away from it. I've got this one. Everybody else will do the same thing. And that's how we, seat you, let you sit with whomever you want to sit. And, we have a couple of people where we'll put the dignitaries. I'll sit with my wife, and I'll sit with Mary and Paul, and we'll, invite a couple of more people for that table, and we'll have a secondary table. And
You're always very kind with accommodations too, because as you were saying, the first year I came was in the thick of COVID and I was still wearing my mask. So at first I wasn't sure I'd be able to come to the gala dinner because then, couldn't eat without a mask. And you had them set up a little table for me away from everyone that was not just a table with a folding chair. It was the same settings as everyone else got. I had a little individual vase of flowers. It was very kind. I was just excited to be included, but it was a mark that you want everyone to not just be included, but included to the same degree. And that speaks a lot.
we were all over here and you were way over there.
I was like 10 feet away, but it was perfect for me. It made me feel very happy. And afterwards, as soon as I was done eating, I put my mask right back on and just walked right over. I think I sat down with LA actually.
The food was great.
It was so good. It was very easy to eat it quickly.
Near me, by the way. LA lives about 7 or 8 miles.
Yeah, she moved down there now. She moved out of Austin like 2 months before I moved to it. And I think I'm still allowed to be personally offended by that. She's one of my friends, so I'm allowed to tease her.
I don't know if she knows about what we're doing this year or not.
I don't know. I think I've texted them about it, but I hope so. I hope she would come back. She's just on purely like almost selfish reasons because she's a friend, but also she has a far more successful than my podcast. And I really appreciate that what she continues to do because she tells a lot of stories that I may not have, heard of, and to so many different people and to such a vast audience. And she still makes time to connect with people, which I think is really important for drawing in new audiences. So I'm very appreciative of people like her, and I hope she continues coming. And for people who are listening who want to come to the convention, where can they go to get a little more info?
There are 2 places that have the conference schedule on them. If you're on Facebook, TitanicCon with 2 C's in there, Titanic CON 24. In one of the featured posts is the current schedule. Also, you can go to the website voyagesexplorertitanic.com. That's my personal website. One of the tabs is TitanicCon24. That will link you with the current schedule information. It'll also give the host venue, and it'll give a secondary one, which is across the road, half a mile away. If you would like to stay at the second venue, and it's a little cheaper, but you will have to do some traveling back and forth to get to those things. It'll tell you everything that you need to know. If you click on the TitanicCon23, you'll see some of the comments people had about last year's conference and some of the photos from it. Our number one objective is to have fun. The main cost, people ask me, what is it? It's $175 for the conference. That covers the tour, the gala dinner, all the sessions. You would be responsible for the hotel. And like you mentioned earlier, 2 people per room, you split the cost. That makes it a lot cheaper. If you put 3 in a room, it's even cheaper. Transportation there, we can help you get to and from the airport, and meals. There's plenty. It's a tourist holiday resort town. There's everything that you want, from McDonald's to Alamo Steakhouse, which is incredibly wonderful, but very nicely expensive too. Right near us, we have a place called JT Hannah's, which has an incredible soup that I love. I'm going to get me some of that Southwest enchilada soup. I really like that. But they have an orange soak cake for dessert that is to die for. My wife and I will get one, split it, and eat half now. You know, I'll get a fourth and she'll get a fourth, and then we'll take it back for the next day, and we'll, each get and it's, oh, it's just incredible. And
I have desserts like that too, where there's a cookie from a bakery back home where I go in there. It's like, how many do you have left in a box? Just take them.
they have the Sunliner Diner, which is an experience among itself. They have a mellow mushroom between us and the attraction. There's just so many different food venues. The Blue Moose Cafe is a hidden gem. Um, they have a bacon dog. It sounds goofy. It's a hot dog wrapped in bacon, and it's all beef, and it's about this big. And it's one of those where you cut it in half and take half of it for the, a later meal.
It sounds like
And,
a cartoon meal.
absolutely. Some of the people take off on Friday night or one of the nights that we're not doing something. Well, Saturday night's being filled with the movie now, but
Yeah.
they'll go Sunday after we're done, and they'll go to a Dollywood, or they'll go to
Hmm.
Dolly Parton's Stampede, which is a wonderful show, or they'll go to a lumberjack show or a comedy show, which is dinner theater.
There are
And
so many dinner theaters in Pigeon Forge, you guys. I've never been to one in Pigeon Forge, but I have a feel, as Bill says, their experiences. I'm just like, I'm having a hard time picking. There's
some
so
people come
many.
in 2 or 3 days early, and
Whoa.
the rates will be much lower Tuesday and Wednesday and things like that. So they're lower than they normally are on the weekends. But come and do two or three things then as well. They have an amusement park called Dollywood, which is owned by Dolly Parton, and they've got roller coasters and shows, and that's a day event right there. And it's people come and they'll do those things beforehand or stay a day or two after and make a great vacay out of it.
Well, I'm really excited for it this year, and I hope that some people who are listening decide to come, maybe just based off the recommendation, and hopefully they'll be able to come and learn something. And also, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about the convention, because as I was saying, you are very busy. Planning a convention is not easy work. So finding time was, I appreciate you coming on and talking about it because I'm really excited about it, and I hope we can get some more people to come.
We take reservations pretty much up until the 1st of August. If as long as we have room for people, we're going to accept it. They On the website, there's a registration form. You submit it, you'll get an email confirmation that says we've received your form. Here's how you send in your fee, and once we get your fee, you're officially registered. And use your PayPal or Venmo or Zelle email as your receipt. That keeps us from having to do a whole lot of paperwork. And the things that we really have to do is we got news that one of our presenters is probably going to have to miss due to a family thing that's come up. Um, she'll be with us again next year, though. Um, so we're going to make that slight adjustment. But everybody that's up right now has committed to being there, barring emergencies and situations. We've also put out an invitation to another major speaker for a major event that's going to happen. And if he's able to come and talk to us, that's going to be a definite feather in our bonnet, for lack of a better term, that people will get a first opportunity to see before the nation sees it. So we still have those things active, and I've got a good bunch of people. We've made a good reputation in Pigeon Forge. You're the Titanic conference. We remember you last year. Y'all guys were awesome. Here's what we can do for you. They love to talk to us because we got good people. Our people are respectful and polite, and good people don't leave messes. That always is a great sign of a great group of people.
For sure. And just thank you for putting on the convention because it's a massive labor of love, as they say, but a labor of love is still a labor. But thank you so much for doing it. And once again, thank you so much for coming on to talk about your history and your experience with the convention. And for anyone who's listening who does want to go, who didn't catch Bill's words, I will put a link in the description box below. So go ahead and click on that if you're interested in coming. But Any final thoughts before I let you go back to the intensive process of planning a convention that's coming up in
We
2 months?
welcome all of you. If Titanic is something that you're either moderately or keenly interested in, you will have fun meeting like kindred spirits at this conference. You'll make new friends. These friends will be, are yours for a lifetime. And people, a lot of people have described us as a TitanicCon family. And we welcome you and we'll greet you with open arms or a handshake, whichever one you'd like.
Or
Um,
away from a distance if you're not a
or,
toucher?
or away from a distance. We'll welcome you to our family. And our number one purpose is perpetuate this story because there's so many people that their stories would not be known if it weren't for events like these that are being held.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So,
Thank you for having me.
thank you for coming. And again, listeners, if you want to come, go ahead and check the link in the description box. I hope to see some of you guys there. Thank you again, Bill, for coming on, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.